Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is putting more pressure on the Liberals to produce a plan to reopen the Canadian economy. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf brought water quality concerns from his constituents to the legislature. And today is National Puppy Day. This is also a time when puppy scams increase. We have details on how you can protect yourself.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal Conservative leader Erin O'Toole wants the government to produce a plan within 20 days to start lifting COVID-19 restrictions. That includes reopening the border to the U.S. to non-essential travel. A new poll by Leger, however, suggests many Canadians feel that it may be too soon. It found that 70% of respondents are either very or somewhat worried about allowing cross-border travel with the United States. We have a new poll question on our website in regards to how well you feel Ottawa's been managing the pandemic. The question is, do you think the Trudeau Liberals have done a good job during the COVID-19 pandemic? Visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll tabulate and release all of the results from the vote on Friday's newscast. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole held a Q&A session with delegates at the recent Conservative convention. O'Toole says when it comes to our country's economic recovery, we really need to focus on and support our energy sector.
More Canadians need to know that energy, hydrocarbons, our success in Alberta and Saskatchewan is not just Western Canada's success, it's Canada's success. It helped us recover from the 2009 global recession. It provides jobs not just in those provinces, across the country. And you know what? Our oil and gas, our softwood lumber, our minerals, our resource sector is the most environmentally and socially responsible in the world, with the highest standards. Calling it ESG is what international investors look for now, environmental social governance. I call it ESGI, environmental social governance with Indigenous partnership and participation. Our resource economy is the best in the world.
The opposition NDP in Alberta says the UCP government made the right decision in delaying stage 3 of reopening our economy. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says hospitalizations are steadily rising and are likely to surpass the 300 key benchmark for lifting restrictions. Premier Jason Kenney has been facing increased pressure, including members of his own caucus, to ease up on the rules as more businesses have been suffering and even closing during the pandemic. Reaction is pouring in regarding the Alberta government's decision to delay Step 3 of its economic relaunch. This includes movie theatres in our province. The owner of the Movie Mill in Lethbridge, Len Binning, says that he's disappointed and even devastated by the decision.
They've now come up with stories. Well, hospitalization is trending in a different direction. Well, we don't have enough vaccines. Well, it's Ottawa's fault. Well, I'm just tired of excuses. I'm frustrated. I have friends in the restaurant business, and I applaud that they're able to be open, but you can't tell me that a restaurant, a bar, or a pub is any safer than a distance movie theater. We're facing the same direction. We're socially distanced. We're wearing a mask. We're not talking. We're not getting up and moving about. It just makes no sense.
Lethbridge currently has 524 active cases of COVID-19, but fortunately, close to 2,300 people have also recovered from the virus. The province also says a recent comment from Dr. Dean Henshaw saying that Lethbridge only had 19 cases on February 24th was wrong. Lethbridge County had 19 cases, while we had 189 here in the city. As we first reported Monday on Bridge City News, due to a rising number of positive COVID-19 cases, the Lethbridge School Division made the decision over the weekend to return to online learning for students from the Emmanuel Christian Secondary School and Elementary School. As Jeanette Rocher reports now, more than half of the students and staff now have to quarantine from the elementary school alone, meaning parents have to quickly adjust schedules to accommodate their young children staying at home to learn.
This is from one of my students, one of my boys that's isolating.
Nadine Alaric holds up the packages that represent the schoolwork her kids will be doing online from home over the next couple of weeks. The switch back to the online format happened rather quickly for the students at Emmanuel Christian Elementary and Secondary schools.
It was all very sudden. So it's not like it was in January where they were given a month notice and every kid went home at Christmas with, okay, this is going to be your package for the week of online learning. And over the holidays, the teachers made videos, whatever. Now they're really just flying by the seat of their pants.
On Sunday, parents received word from the Lethbridge School Division that 67% of the students, 71% of teachers, and half the support staff would have to stay home and quarantine due to an outbreak of 3 people having COVID. According to Alberta Health Services, because of close contacts, this could potentially spread to half the school.
It's surprising how quickly it can overwhelm the whole system.
This means parents of elementary students had to make some quick adjustments, scrambling their schedules, and even staying home from work. Such is the case with this mother of 3. However, Alaric considers herself lucky.
I am actually a substitute teacher, so I can be home with the kids. I feel so bad for the teachers that have kids of their own and have to juggle both.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Rocher.
The province announced today that it is offering millions of free rapid testing kits. At least 2 million of the tests will be available for businesses across Alberta. This follows the rollout of 1.2 million rapid tests to long-term care homes, schools, hospitals, and homeless shelters. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says any employer or service provider in Alberta can apply for and receive the free rapid tests. Shandro believes it is important to give business owners and service providers another tool for screening COVID-19 cases early while helping to break the chain of transmission. Help is on the way for Albertans in the form of an app to prevent opioid and other substance-related deaths. The Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Jason Lewan, says the app is the first of its kind in Canada and is meant for those who are using alone at home to access the help that they need. Lewan says the app was needed especially with the increase in overdose deaths during the pandemic.
Data shows the impact COVID-19 and public health restrictions put in place to keep us safe has had on those struggling with substance use disorder with huge negative impact in their lives. Sadly, 1,128 Albertans lost their lives as a result of an overdose last year. EMS responses, emergency department visits, and hospitalization have all been increased since the pandemic reached Alberta.
A Lethbridge group opposed to coal mining on the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rockies took its concerns to the streets in our city over the weekend. Mountains Not Mine members brought their vehicles together to spread a message about what the group says is potential for damage to the Old Man River and our water supply. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf spoke at the legislature recently about the water concerns brought to him by his constituents.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge East.
Mr. Speaker, in my constituency and across Alberta, communities have an interest in maintaining a secure water supply. In southern Alberta, historically, fluctuating water levels have made the appropriate allocation of water even more crucial for our communities and economy. Statements in the media and by some in the official opposition claiming there are changes to the Old Man water allocation order have many people questioning the prospective impact to our communities and this important resource. To the Minister of Environment and Parks, what changes, if any, are taking place to water allocations in the Old Man River Basin?
The Honourable the Minister of Environment and Parks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that certain people are fear-mongering when it comes to water inside the Old Man Basin, Mr. Speaker. To be clear, nothing has changed when it comes to that allocation, Mr. Speaker. The conversation that has been taking place down there was, and I quote, recognizing the need for sustainable water use by setting aside 20% of the original order volume for aquatic environment needs, Mr. Speaker, for fish and wildlife, Mr. Speaker. There is no changes to the allocation, nor no proposed changes to the allocation to increase water for coal, despite the fact the opposition continues to make that up, Mr. Speaker. We continue to move forward with protecting the environment in a very special place in this province.
For many months now, the Christian organization The Mustard Seed has been trying to find a home for sober housing in Lethbridge. In January, they were denied provincial approval to move into the Ramada and neighboring Chinook Motel. They have since set their sights on a building on 13th Street South. This building would be different, a sober shelter for temporary use. Lethbridge City Council will complete its final reading on Tuesday for the nonprofit's zoning application. The group also has plans to work alongside the Soup Kitchen, and Lethbridge Soup Kitchen's Executive Director Bill Ginther doesn't expect the Mustard Seed to keep looking in Lethbridge if the most recent application is denied.
It's very difficult to speak for other organizations. We will become one, but they have their own voice. There have been strong hints that they may just withdraw because they've tried a lot of different avenues. They've tried a lot of different buildings with no success. It seems that our permitting department has more, from my perspective, more power than they should have. I realize it's important to make sure that we are zoned adequately and, in a sense that makes sense to the population in the area. And so I don't know this. This would be my guess that they have grown weary from the long wait, but they, like me, haven't given up yet.
For the first time in 8 years, the City of Lethbridge has adopted a revised master plan for recreation and culture. Last year, they put out a call and worked with numerous community groups and partners to develop a plan. Robin Harper, who's the General Manager of Recreation and Culture, says he was pleased to see how much interaction there was prior to finalizing the plan.
So the level of engagement we had was tremendous. We were extremely pleased with that. The other part of this, I think, that really was gratifying was to see the importance that the community places on recreation and cultural opportunities.
Today is National Puppy Day. It's a day to celebrate our four-legged furry friends and show them just how much they mean to us. As Micah Quinn explains now, sadly, during the pandemic, many people have fallen victim to puppy scams where they're looking to give these animals a forever home.
The Better Business Bureau is reporting that Canadians lost over $105,000 due to puppy scams through private purchases or a breeder since January of 2020. This means that residents need to do their homework when they are looking to purchase a new puppy.
While it is an emotional decision, it's also a financial one too. So you want to protect that investment and do your research, check the references, make sure that you have all the records. If it is a purebred, then the breeder is going to have to register the dog as well. So you want to be taking a look at that. And then also do your research and make sure that you're also paying a fair price.
O'Sullivan Anderson says that there are many red flags that buyers should keep an eye on.
So if they don't want to meet face-to-face, if they don't want to meet you online via Zoom or FaceTime or some other means, that would be a red flag. If you are looking to have to pay for the puppy in advance before meeting the puppy or the breeder, that's a red flag as well. Look for things like doing a thorough search. If you're doing it from a breeder or someone else, do a thorough search, making sure that you have all health records, sales records, and being clear on what the return is. And specifically what I mean by that is a lot of ethical breeders, they are invested in the life of the animal. So if situations change for you and you're not able to keep that puppy, an ethical breeder will want to make sure that they get that puppy back because they're invested in the life of the animal. So those are things that you want to look at when you're making that decision.
To report a puppy scam, you can visit bbb.org/scam tracker. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
More young people are contracting COVID-19 in British Columbia. Now, that's according to the province's provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. She says while case numbers are keeping her up at night, BC is not seeing variants drive transmission, but rather a replacement of cases with variants of concern.
While more and more people are getting vaccinated every day, it's very important that the risk for all of us remains high. And we see that in our 7-day rolling average. We see that in the increasing that we've seen over the last few weeks. We ask about whether we're in a third wave. It really is. We've come down from the peak of our second wave, but we have leveled out for many weeks now. And it's a slow and steady increase. Concerningly, we're starting to see younger people who are being affected end up in hospital and needing hospital and ICU care, and that is concerning. At the same time, we're having more and more people protected by these vaccines, but we do not yet have enough protection to keep us all safe.
A drive-through clinic in Regina, Saskatchewan that had been administering doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine is temporarily closing. The Saskatchewan Health Authority announced that its supply of 15,000 vaccines it received earlier this month had run out. It says the clinic would reopen when more vaccines are made available. The cutoff age for getting a dose at the drive-in clinic had dropped to 58 by the time of Monday's announcement. A review by the RCMP Civilian Review and Complaints Commission found police officers discriminated against Debbie Baptiste. Debbie is the mother of 22-year-old Colton Boucher, who was shot and killed on a Saskatchewan farm in August of 2016. A lawyer for Baptiste says she felt she was fighting a battle on behalf of her family that could never be won.
We thank them for writing the report. We thank them for interviewing all the witnesses. We thank them for doing a diligent job, even though the RCMP destroyed some communications on that day that Colton was killed. They destroyed communications from August 9th, 2016. And we'll never know what are on those communications. We'll never know what was said between the members. I think we can probably infer, given the fact, given the racism and the discrimination on how she was treated that night. And even though they don't find any other acts of discrimination, we do.
A fast-moving fire tore through a townhome in Oshawa, Ontario, leaving at least 4 people unaccounted for. Officials did not identify the 4, but family and friends are worried 2 men and 2 children may not have made it out of the home alive.
They live on the main floor. Her dad and the 2 boys were on the top floor. Apparently he woke up to a smoke, and he got his youngest son out and his wife, and he went up to the kids. And one of them was saying it was too hot, and he's like, just follow me. I guess there was a lot of smoke there. And he turned around, and the kids didn't follow him. And that's all I know of that. And they're saying the 3 people unaccounted for. So the assumption is the worst at this point. Well, the wife is in the hospital, and the youngest son is autistic. They were on the main floor with him. They got him out first. We don't know what condition they're in, though. The dad's asleep in the car right now. Just waiting to see what's going on.
Police in Boulder, Colorado say 10 people were killed following a shooting at a local supermarket. Police say the fatalities include a police officer, and they now have a 21-year-old suspect in custody.
We had a very tragic incident today here at the King Soopers. There was loss of life. We have multiple people who were killed in this incident. And I am sorry to have to report that one of them was a Boulder police officer. During this trying time, I would ask the media and the public to honor the privacy of the officer's family and his co-workers here at the police department.
It appears that many Central Americans view the United States as the land flowing with milk and honey. You don't have to look any further than the caravans of people slowly migrating their way from countries like Honduras and El Salvador to the U.S. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says what makes this such a challenge for government officials in both Mexico and the United States is where to house the thousands who are wanting to cross the border.
Where are they to go? Where are they to be placed? How will they be absorbed by our nation when we have the homeless crisis here? That when you drive down Los Angeles, any one of the major streets, there are communities of tents and garbage and people living in just abysmal conditions. And these people need to be taken care of before we're able to allow these caravans to just walk right in without any vetting, without any medical attention or vetting, with all of these minors, etc.
Lisa Daftari will also discuss new threats Iran is making to the U.S. and how that will impact all of North America. That Q&A with Lisa is coming up in the second half of our program. A lot of snow we saw Monday night in Lethbridge has finally melted. Now there is potential, however, for more of the white stuff again on Thursday. A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. We woke up to a winter wonderland in many regions of southwestern Alberta today, but thanks to the warmer temperatures, a lot of the snow has melted. Jeanette Rocher is back with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, there's a potential of even more snow developing on Thursday, so perhaps maybe we shouldn't take off those winter tires just yet.
Yeah, well, you know what, Hal? I was just saying this morning that we had just put out our patio furniture on the deck over the weekend, and we said, as soon as we do this, it's going to start to snow. And sure enough, what happened? We woke up this morning with snow on the ground, unfortunately. And yes, those flurries are going to come back again as soon as tomorrow night. Actually, Wednesday evening, we could see a chance of flurries or showers, and then, of course, turning into that 60% chance of flurries on a Thursday. Overnight tonight, -1, and tomorrow 8 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud on Wednesday. Some gusty winds tomorrow, 60 km, and then, as I was saying, precipitation overnight Wednesday into the Thursday there with the snow, 3 degrees the high for Thursday, and snow continuing Into Thursday night, Friday mainly cloudy, high of 8 degrees. We have had some form of precipitation happening almost every single night this week. So Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, chance of showers, Saturday night, chance of showers, and then I think sometime Sunday night as well. But mostly those temperatures staying above zero for 9 degrees throughout the weekend, 6 degrees for next Monday with a mix of sun and clouds. So yes, our precipitation definitely increasing as spring has sprung for sure, but our temperatures staying mostly above the seasonal average for this time of year. 7 the average high, -5 the average low, 22 was our high temperature back in 1939, and in 1965 we had our chilliest day on record, -25. And the sun rose this morning at 7:27 a.m. 7:48 though is when the sun will go down this evening. So nice to see those the sunlight staying out for more than 12 hours these days. As I mentioned, spring has sprung. Over on the west coast tomorrow, a little bit of a wet one, 11 degrees in Victoria, 9 in Vancouver with chance of showers. Edmonton could see a mix of flurries or showers tomorrow, high of 5 degrees, 7 degrees in Calgary with increasing cloud. Both of those cities not too bad with the wind gusts, maybe Calgary a little bit more, looking at about 40 to 50 K tomorrow. Saskatoon, high of 6 degrees, high of 7 in Regina with a mix of sun and cloud, 1 degree in Winnipeg with partly cloudy skies there and a 30-kilometer-per-hour wind. As we look further into central Canada here, we are seeing certainly some chances of precipitation here. 15 degrees the high for Toronto with rain, chance of showers in Ottawa as well, 12 degrees the high there. 14 the high tomorrow in Montreal, also seeing some rain though. Out on the East Coast, much better story though, mix of sun and cloud. Look at these temperatures too, lovely teens. 14 degrees in Fredericton, 13 in Halifax, 11 in Charlottetown under sunny skies. Beautiful sunshine expected tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland as well, with a high of 5 degrees. So there you have it, that is your forecast.
The company that makes heavy-duty diesel Ram pickup trucks is telling some owners to park their rigs outside due to the risk of an engine fire. Fiat Chrysler is recalling 20,000 of the Ram trucks in both Canada and the United States. The company says the 2021 pickup and chassis cab trucks have heater electrical relays that can short, overheat, and sometimes even catch fire. The fires can start even if the engine is turned off. The company says it knows of 3 fires, but so far no injuries. The recall trucks are equipped with a 6.7-liter Cummins diesel engines. The recall is expected to begin on April 30th. Richardson International has announced big plans for a canola crushing plant in eastern Saskatchewan. The company says it will be doubling the size of its plant in Yorkton to 2.2 million tons, making it the largest in Canada. Work on the expansion will begin soon with a completion date set for 2024. Agriculture Minister David Marriott says the expansion helps meet a provincial goal of crushing 75% of the canola produced in Saskatchewan. George Weston says he's putting Weston Foods up for sale after efforts to build up the bakery through acquisitions came up a little short. The Weston family says pursuing a sale represents the best way to unlock Weston Foods' potential. The bakery business represents less than 10% of the net asset value of George Weston, which also owns Loblaw Companies. Proceeds from the sale of the bakery business are likely to be returned to shareholders through share repurchases over time. Royal LePage is forecasting a big jump in the average price of cabins and cottages in Canada. The real estate company predicts the average price for the recreational property will increase 15% this year to just over $502,000. That would be on top of the 16% jump seen last year as the pandemic prompted buyers to explore country living. Royal LePage is raising its estimate from November in light of a shortage of inventory and a surge of people interested in using the homes for weekend getaways and remote work. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 145 points on the day to finish at 18,670. The Dow was down 308 points to 32,423. The S&P 500 was down 30 points to 3911, and the Nasdaq was down 149 points on the day to 13,228. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 421 to 57.35 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $2.51 US. Gold was down 8 cents to $17.27 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $25.07 US an ounce. Wheat is at $305 per metric ton, barley's at $310, canola's at $7.83, and corn is at $331 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 35 cents to $119.13. Feeder cattle were up 38 cents to $135.45. And lean hogs were up $1.43 to $96.48. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.46 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the UCP announced today that it will be offering millions of free rapid testing kits. At least 2 million of the tests will be available for businesses across Alberta. This follows the rollout of 1.2 million rapid tests to long-term care facilities, schools, hospitals, and homeless shelters. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says any employer or service provider in Alberta can apply for the free rapid tests. Iran has launched new threats against the United States, and that's not good news for any of us here in North America. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will explain why in just a moment. Iran has made renewed threats against the United States, including one at an army post in the U.S. Capitol. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the threat is not only against Fort McNair, but also against the Army's Vice Chief of Staff. Why the threats from Iran?
Yeah, well, there have been covert threats and there have been overt threats. This one was detected as the U.S. Basically was able to tap into Iranian communications where they were talking about having a type of attack that was similar to the USS Cole attack a couple of years back. Well, thankfully, this was intercepted. Now, it doesn't mean that the Iranian regime will stop flexing their muscles against the United States. For some reason, Hal, the Iranian regime believes that they have the upper hand in this new administration. They were under this pressure campaign under President Trump. They're still under the same sanctions that they were under by President Trump. We're not yet in an Iran deal because President Trump withdrew from that deal in 2018. But yet, they are calling upon the Biden administration not only to come to the table, not only to remove the sanctions, not only to give them cash and to release them of their economic penalties, but to really and they've used these words before, but to make it up to them. We owe them from the Trump era, and as these stories come out day after day after the threats that we're hearing from the Iranian regime, again on the surface and but beneath the surface, it becomes apparent that they truly do believe that they have the upper hand here, and they are flexing their muscles as though the U.S. will be the one to have to impress them to negotiate a new deal, and not the other way around.
Now, you mentioned similar to the USS Cole-style attacks. Just as reference for our viewers here, a little bit of backstory. It references the 2000 suicide attacks against the U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer in Yemen, which left 17 sailors dead. It was very tragic. Now, Lisa, Iran's supreme leader says the U.S. must reverse sanctions, as you mentioned earlier, put in place by former President Trump before Tehran would return to enrichment limits set under the 2015 nuclear deal. Apparently, there's a little bit of lack of trust between Tehran and Washington.
Yes, and you bring up the most important points here, and that's the enrichment of uranium that are at levels that are just outrageous, that they are improving their ballistic missiles program, that they are improving their satellite technology to deliver a weapon. And for all of these reasons, I mean, look, the evidence speaks much more clearly than anything else. Why should the United States get back into a deal? I mean, there are people here in the United States that are also part of the regime's propaganda machine, and they go around saying, we have to loosen the sanctions. It's not humane to have sanctions on the Iranian people. We have to let them have a weapons program because that's just a national program like all these other countries that have weapons programs. We have to make a deal with them. We have to normalize relations with the Iranian regime. But what for? The evidence really tells a better and more clear and accurate picture of what the Iranian regime is all about. They have been beefing up their nuclear capability. They have been, cracking down on human rights much more than ever before. They still have been pouring money into terrorism in the region, in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, the list goes on and on. So why should we? I mean, look, the evidence really does spell out a much clearer picture than anything else. And I think that we should have a bipartisan support on really curbing the Iranian regime and its tentacles.
Lisa, the caravans continue as Mexicans recently discovered hundreds of Central American migrants in 3 tractor trailers near the Mexico-Guatemala border. There were 329 people hiding inside of these trucks, including 114 minors.
Right. Look, this is a very, very sad situation. It's a very real and raw situation. Anyone looking at that footage, regardless of your political identity, will say that this is a very sad situation. And look, it was a sad situation under President Trump, and it's a sad situation under President Biden. It doesn't take away from the reality of the situation. Where are they to go? Where are they to be placed? How will they be absorbed by our nation when we have the homeless crisis here that, when you drive down Los Angeles, any one of the major streets, there are communities of tents and garbage and people living in just abysmal conditions. And these people need to be taken care of before we're able to allow these caravans to just walk right in without any vetting, without any medical attention or vetting, with all of these minors, etc. I think the point of the story here, Hal, is that regardless of one's intentions, the reality is the reality. And you can be pro-immigration, you could be anti-immigration, but now we see that President Biden is stuck in the same quagmire that President Trump was, regardless of his intentions to be much more lax on immigration.
Human smuggling and human trafficking is still a very big, serious issue we have to deal with here all across the Americas. Lisa, a Democratic mayor of a southern border town in Texas says he's incensed over the Biden administration's handling of the immigration crisis in his backyard. Mayor Bruno Lozano is begging Biden to do just a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. And look, for this Democratic mayor, this is a reality. It's happening in his in his area, and it's going to happen in his city and in their states, and it's going to trickle right up into the rest of the United States. But for him particularly, when it's affecting, the crime levels, the amount of human attention that one can give to these migrants, it becomes a real situation. No matter what one could feel about wanting to help these migrants, about wanting to let America be, have open arms, it comes down to logistics. How can we absorb these individuals? And this mayor, I think he's telling the truth. He's speaking it like it is. And for him and people just like him all across the southern border, this will become a security issue. This will become an issue of economics. This will become an issue of asking Washington to do more for the people, both for the migrants and for the American citizens living across those borders.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin arrived in Afghanistan over the weekend and met with Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani as the deadline, Lisa, to withdraw troops from the country nears.
Yes. So the defense secretary met with the Afghan president. He took his notes back to Washington to discuss with President Biden as to what can be done. They are under 2 months from the deadline in which President Trump promised to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. And now it looks like they may have to either extend that deadline or decide to put more troops back in. That's what President Biden is saying. He's saying it's a very tough situation. And they're, of course, blaming it on the Trump administration not giving them a smooth transition. So, look, we had the quote unquote war president that everyone believed President Trump would get us into a lot of wars. Didn't start any wars. Not only that, but he promised to pull us out and pull our troops out of these hot spots across the globe. And now we have the Democrat and very liberal administration of Joe Biden saying that we might not be able to pull out of this hot spot. So it's interesting to watch. It's interesting to see the finger pointing. And for the sake of those troops, their families, and the Afghan people, we hope to see normalcy in that part of the world, and we hope to see our troops come home.
Russian jets hit some rebel training camps recently in northwestern Syria near the Turkish border, and reports say Syrian artillery killed 7 civilians and injured 14 medics in an attack on a hospital in the area. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, there's no laws. There's no sense of schools or hospitals being off limits. This is one of the reasons we withdrew from Syria, as we were talking about in the case of Afghanistan. Similar situation, to have to be involved in a situation, a crisis like the one in Syria. There are so many different groups involved. There are so many different conflicts being fought on different levels. Russia's involvement is a subject on its own. The Iranian regime's involvement, the Kurds are there, the Turks are there, and in this case, we're seeing the Russians are, applying a heavier hand, hoping to have influence in that part of the world, as is their agenda. What's been lost on the world ever since the Obama presidency was the America First, which what President Trump attempted to bring to the White House, is to say, if we are going to be involved in a crisis such as Syria or Afghanistan, we have to know what our bottom line is. What are we there for? And in the case of Syria, there is really no bottom line to be defined, and it hasn't been defined. And there has never been any clear action that has been taken by the United States. So when you see a headline like this, you ask yourself, well, why are the Russians getting involved? Or why is the Iranian regime still involved? What are they hoping to gain in that part of the world? And how can we, in the West, protect our assets there?
Lisa, dozens of pro-democracy protesters and police officers were injured on the weekend when Thai police used tear gas, rubber bullets, and even water cannons to disperse a large crowd near the Grand Palace in the capital of Bangkok.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of pro-democracy protests across the globe. Once again, I don't know if it's the spring that brings this out in people, or if it's the weather, if it's the logistics, or if it's just the concept of spring. Remember, we had the Arab Spring as well. Look, in places like Thailand, we're seeing these types of uprisings because perhaps they're looking at the region and they're looking at their neighbors and they're saying, we don't want to be, we don't want this communism to spread. We don't want to be repressed. We don't want human rights abuses. We want democracy. And they think this is the right time to stand up and say, we want democracy. We are defining our future, and that's what we will fight for. And we're seeing it on the streets of Myanmar. We're seeing it on the streets of Thailand. We're seeing it actually all over Europe in response to the COVID shutdowns. People are saying we want our freedom, and whether it's based on the season that we're in, the time that this pandemic has probably brought a lot of priorities in front of people's eyes to say this is what we want, and we want to define our own futures.
Yeah, you mentioned Myanmar. Let's discuss what's happening there as well. Doctors and other medical professionals are taking to the streets in protest of the military coup that ousted the country's civilian government last month. Healthcare workers have had enough.
Yeah, everyone's had enough. And we saw before where journalists came out and writers and political analysts saying, wait, this is crazy. We had a very normal, what to them was a very normal running country. All of a sudden, the military, shut everything down. They put our leader in prison. They keep, adding on these alleged faux charges on her. And we don't want that. And now you're seeing a new group of doctors and healthcare professionals saying we've had enough. We have other priorities here. We have a job to do. And we've had enough. The military can't continue to do this. And, in the beginning, we thought that this is going to be a very short-lived coup because, after all, it was just run by the military and it was not supported by other segments of the country. But then as people came out, the crackdowns became bloodier and we saw the number of casualties rise, unfortunately, Hal. And if the military is going to keep this up, this is going to become bloodier because the people are saying they don't want this. Enough is enough and we want to continue. We want our leader out of prison and running the country once again. So people are making their voices very clear. I'm glad the media is picking up on this at least a bit more than we would have heard. But we are thinking about the people in Burma and hope that this comes to an end very soon.
Absolutely. Now, a new report says Pope Francis is warning that more and more organized crime is trying to cash in on the pandemic. Did the Pope actually speak of any particular scams, maybe some involving Nigerian princes?
Don't open any emails, don't click on any links. The Pope is referring to mafia-related crimes. If you remember how the beginning of the pandemic, he also warned about this. This is an interesting thing for him to double down on now, nearing hopefully the end of the pandemic, to say there are people taking advantage of this, particularly in Europe and in Italy, where the pandemic was just horrific. You have a lot of mafia action there, activity there. These mafias are obviously taking advantage of what's going on in the world and of people's vulnerabilities, their economic vulnerabilities, their emotional vulnerabilities, and therefore we should be very vigilant not to get duped by these mafias and to really call them out if we see any of this organized crime.
Wonder if any of the mafia mob bosses ever look at the Pope and say, he's a good fella. Maybe not, I don't know. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.
It's a topic we've been focusing on quite a bit lately, marital relationships, because they're challenging even in the best of times. But with the stress of COVID restrictions, it's put even more stress on marriage relationships. Today's guest says although there are different causes of relational breakdowns, there's one in particular that is the biggest issue, and we will chat about that today. Brent Taylor is a Lethbridge marriage coach and the author of Hers Greatest Need. Welcome, Brent, to Bridge City News. We're so glad to have you on today.
Thank you, Jeanette. I'm honored to be here. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Okay, so can you briefly share a bit about what you do to help couples improve their relationships?
Well, I have a marriage builder program. I call it UCG. It includes my book, which is His and Hers Greatest Need, and the single biggest reason why marriages break down, and how to build it up. And with that program, I've developed understanding, communication, and giving. And there's multiple elements within that program. It's either a 5-session or 8-session program, and it really helps restore marriages. So I've been doing that for a number of years.
Awesome. Now, this book is based upon some of your own personal experiences, right? So you yourself have gone through divorce and some tough times. Can you maybe give us a bit of your backstory?
Sure. Well, born and raised in Calgary, 1962, and moved around a few places and was married young, and have 3 awesome children. They're 34 and 32 and 28, and 3 grandchildren. And I worked about 25 years in the oil patch. And then I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was going to be somebody. And because I wanted to find somebody, because I felt, I guess I was rejected most of my marriage. Anyways, I raised $20 million and I built the largest manufacturing plant in Canada, in Lethbridge, actually in the county, BCT Structures. And I was on top of the world. I moved back to Lethbridge. I'd lived here before. And I was going somewhere, and I thought I'd find that amazing relationship that I was looking for. And I got it up to about 130 employees. It's a huge manufacturing plant making industrial accommodations for the oil patch primarily, the rig shacks and the camp shacks. And so I was just on top of the world, and I just loved the employees. I loved the whole business aspect. And then I lost it all. I was living with somebody here, and I lost my $50 million company, and I had to be broken to be awoken. And then I remarried a few years later, and I thought this was it. And I married somebody that had been badly beaten in her childhood, and I didn't realize, but I was husband number 5, and God still had to keep working on me. And about a year later, I never saw her again. And I looked up and I said, why, God, why? And he started to show me his and hers greatest need, the single biggest need, and the single biggest reason why marriages break down. So I started drawing my circles, and I started taking jobs after about a year of writing my book and crying my eyes out, lots of tears. And then I started taking jobs, and I started confirming and doing my research and surveying. And up to now, probably well over 11,000 people I've shared this with. Ministers in Calgary, ministers in Medicine Hat, Christians, non-Christians, Muslims, 82, 22, and every one of them has said this is the greatest need, the greatest breakdown, but we didn't know it. Wow. So what I teach is not taught in the church, is not taught in the counselor's office. And roughly we have an 80% divorce rate in North America and much of the Western world. 69% of those divorces are being initiated by wives. Call it the walk-away wife syndrome. We tend to follow the sheep. And I think a lot of people don't realize the single biggest impact on a child's life is not your parenting. It's your marriage. And so
the parents' marriage. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're at an all-time high for mental health. Before COVID, we were.
Absolutely.
We had lots of issues around division and gender and depression and single parents. Technology added to all that division. and we were just on a downhill slide, and especially in Alberta, because the oil patch went up like this, and then it went down like this. And there's a saying that says, a wife's loyalty is tested when her husband has nothing. And a husband's loyalty is tested when he has everything. And unfortunately, we make it about the money.
Now, Brent, you were mentioning that in your book, you talk about the biggest break. So tell me, what is the biggest breakdown that causes marriages to break down?
First, I have to give you the greatest need.
Okay, please do so.
Right? Because that need is not being filled.
Right.
And then the way it gets treated causes the single biggest breakdown.
Right.
So I'll verbally explain it. I normally draw circles. I can't talk too much unless I draw circles. But anyways, the greatest need for a man is significance. He wants to be his wife's hero. There's not a man in the world that doesn't want to be his wife's hero. He might suck at it, but he wants to be. Because every little boy knows, do I got what it takes? Right? And there's not a woman in the world that doesn't want to be fought for. So if she's going to be fought for, who's going to be the one who fights for her? Her hero. It all boils down to God's design. He's our hero. And he asks husbands to love their wives like Christ loved the church. So who's our hero? And so he wants to be our hero. So his greatest need is significance. And her greatest need is security, emotional and physical security. Yes, financial, but she'll take the emotional and physical security first.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Right. So in the beginning of the relationship, now I usually say the sex and the roses are great. He feels like number one, significance, and she's going to live happily ever after, security. And then she's trying to drag his butt over the white picket fence to responsibility land. And he says, it's not as fun over here as it used to be. And women, you also have to play over here where you met him. But here's where the big test comes. When the children start coming. When a man and woman are together just themselves, that intimacy they have, that oxytocin release, that chemical bonder, when they're physically intimate. Well, Mama Bear has that when she's birthing and nursing. He doesn't get what she's getting, and she doesn't get why he doesn't get what she's getting. So he feels like number four. Every man feels insignificant to his wife when those children come. He used to be number one, and now he's number four. She doesn't understand because she's happy. She's living happily ever after, and she is bonded so closely with that child in her womb and as she's nursing. So those first couple of years, that bond is so tight, and she doesn't understand why he's feeling like number four. And here's the breakdown. Every man, when he feels insignificant, so when I lost my $50 million company, when I lost my marriage, my daughter wouldn't speak to me for 6 months. I was nobody. And when a man feels like nobody, he retreats. He goes inside himself. It's a fear-based response. And fear stands for false evidence appearing real. He doesn't even know he's doing it. And when he retreats, he's trying to fill the void. He works more. He gambles more, he porns more, drinks more, plays around more. He's trying to fill the void because he wants to be his wife's hero.
Mm-hmm. So what are some ways that a wife can do that for her husband? How can she build this significance in her husband?
Right. So her security, I'll come to that in about 30 seconds here. Here's her security is threatened. When her security is threatened because he's retreating, she feels abandoned. Her autopilot fear-based response is not to retreat. She attacks or rejects him. She's trying to teach him a lesson, don't you abandon me, but it doesn't come out right as she's chucking the frying pan across the room. He takes it literally. She doesn't say what she means. She wants him to stay, not disengage, but he takes it literally and retreats some more. And then she feels more insecure, more abandonment, more attack and reject, and it goes around and around and around. So I tell men, when you're loving your children and picking up the vacuum and helping with the home and making date nights, you are loving your wife, because a woman's brain is very busy. She's about 15 to 20% busier than a guy's brain. Not inferior, superior, just busy. She's got lots of things on the go. He's more singularly focused. And then I say to wives, when you're loving your husband, you're loving your children. Because with those children, when they came along, the balance went out of whack. She was going to the children instead of to him. And he was going to her and she's going to the children. So now it's tilted. So to help put it back in balance, he needs to go to the children and she needs to go to her husband.
Okay, yeah, because in your book, you do write that when a woman is loving her husband, she's actually loving her children. And is that what you mean by that?
Yes, absolutely. She's putting that balance back in the family, because if you don't have your marriage, you don't have a family.
Yeah. So I know that you also mentioned that for women, their biggest needs is security. So what do you mean by that exactly? And when a wife isn't finding that sense of security, how does she, you're kind of mentioning some of her coping mechanisms that aren't necessarily good, and they could be contributing to the marital breakdown, right? It affects the relationship.
So she's looking for security, and she's also looking for maturity. That's what she's looking for in a husband, because that gives security. When she first gets married, she's not looking for a lover. She's looking for maturity. She's looking for somebody like her father, because she's actually leaving one man and being transferred to another man. And he's designed to protect and provide. So if you're a protector and a provider, you need to be mature. And that's because she needs security. Here's a classic example. Little Johnny's climbing an apple tree. He climbs halfway up and Mama Bear comes by and says, Johnny, you better be careful. You better get down from there. You're going to break a leg. She's worried about safety and security. God made woman so that she looks after those things. She uses the frontal part of her lobe more for safety and security than a man does, for consequential thinking. That's the way she was designed. Papa Bear sees Johnny climbing a tree, says, Johnny, good job. If you can reach here and here, you can go higher. Significance, right?
Yeah.
Same thing if you go out in a strange city in a junky neighborhood and it's pitch black out, are you going to want to go outside by yourself, or are you going to want your husband, a friend, or a dog to go with you?
Right, of course. There we go with the security.
Most
right?
men will go out in the dark by themselves, and they're not too worried because men are more designed to take a risk.
True.
And they're designed to take a risk so that they can sacrifice their life for their wife and their children.
Interesting.
She wasn't designed for that.
Yeah, it's interesting how it all kind of comes back to those primal needs. So what are some ways that a husband can go about making his wife feel more secure? What can he do?
Well, there's a variety of things. I ask men to listen to their wife with their eyes and zip their lip. So if there's any men, guys, listen with your eyes and zip your lip.
I like that.
Because most men think, why are we talking unless we're solving a problem? Women think, well, why are we solving a problem? I just want you to listen. And here's what women don't even know. And when I share it with them, they go, yeah, that's it. Because the problem's not the problem. Men go, what do you mean the problem's not the problem? She wants to know that you care about how she feels about the problem. She wants you to listen to her heart. If you try to solve her problem or fix her problem, often women take it critically. He's not trying to criticize. That's how he loves. He loves solvingly and physically. Men's brains are wired more physically, testosterone, and solvingly, how things move and objects. So he's more about the how, right? So that's why he's doing that. Well, she doesn't take it the right way, so she shuts down and then she rejects him. So I tell men, she's not looking for solutions. She's looking for you to listen to her heart. So that's one of the ways. She needs to feel safe before she can trust you with her heart. The other way is to help her take some of those plates that she's juggling in the air, whether it's kids or the house or whatever else. So she's very busy. So helping her out and really being engaged with your children. Mama bears know intuitively how important a father is to those children. And when dads just come home and they ignore the children or they do their thing or they don't spend time with their children, she knows that those children need it. So that bonding and that responsibility is so strong with mom. So when dads actually show that they're doing that, it warms her heart because she is so focused on the development of those children. So that's also loving her. The greatest way a husband loves his wife is he stays. He doesn't retreat. He never quits loving her. He might screw up, but he continues to learn how to love her and what she needs, because he is the leader of love. He is the initiator of unity. Who puts his arm out to ask to go for a dance? Who goes down on one knee? He makes the offer. He's the initiator. He's the leader. But he's the leader because he puts her ahead of himself.
That's so
So
interesting.
he's the leader because he puts himself last. That's why he's the leader.
We're such different creatures, aren't we?
Yes. I always say when God made man, he said it was good. And when he made woman, he said, whoo, man.
Yeah,
not just because she's pretty, because he's going to need her and he's not going to quite understand her.
Well, you've got such a wealth of information here and expertise and experience, and we could go on all day talking about it, but it looks like we're actually out of time. But we just appreciate so much having you on today, Brent.
Thank you very much. It's my passion. And can I share a little poem with you?
Of course.
Okay. And I hope that couples will reach out and give me a call. The poem is, woman was made from man and for man, not from his feet or his head, to be beneath or above, but from his side to walk alongside. Under his arm to be protected, near his heart to be loved. And where he is weak, she is strong. And where she is weak, he is strong. Husband and wife are completers, not competers. They're the greatest team between two human beings. And when God is at the top and the center of their lives, they will know how to love one another, their family, their community, and their world.
I love it. Thank you so much. Brent Taylor is a Lethbridge marriage coach and the author of His, Hers, Greatest Need. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.